Keep off politics. It's what was on the front pages a couple of days ago. What we don't know that is in the back end, somebody actually took this thing to court and said, you know what? We can't have this kind of thing going on. We can't have people who are supposed to be the implementers of government policy then continuing to politic. So that's what we're talking about this morning. And Mwaura Kabata is the Vice President of the Law Society of Kenya. He's the man whose signature is behind that petition. Good morning, Wakili.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Very well, how are you?
Fine, thank you. I want to hear you very well. They want to hear you say good morning again.
Good morning.
Fantastic. There we are.
Good morning.
Good morning. Karibu Sana. Thank you for being here. Of course, you let us know the intrigues around all of this, and we'll talk about the why and what is important. And one who also makes sure that is involved in this discourse to make sure that some of these things we don't allow even by speaking about them, is Professor Alfred Omenya, who is a policy and governance expert. And I stress and emphasize on governance. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Very well. Nice to have me here again.
It is nice to have you here. Thank you for doing that today. I want to ask both of you to interpret this proverb for us. Wakili Kabata, usually in the situation when we go around the continent of Africa and we land in a different country every week, and when we come back with the proverbs of that country, and then we try to interpret them and apply them as best we can. So we'd love to share that with you this morning for you to tell us what you think. This week we're in the country of Sao Tome and Principe. Sao Tome and Principe.
Yes.
Hey, yeah?
Principe.
Principe, exactly. And they've had some interesting things to say. But this is what we are hearing today. He who does not work does not eat. He who does not work does not eat.
You know the continental African educational cycle is the same, and so for what applies in Sao Tome and Principe applies across the African continent. It simply defines the social aspect of production and economic governance in Africa. That it rewards those who put in the labor, and so labor dynamics then equate what actually puts you going. And because Africa did not have the accumulation mentality, the primitive mentality of accumulation, it defined the day-to-day activities of instilling labor principles and also informing the reward of labor, which was, typically feeding yourself. And so it applies across and probably also borrowed into the biblical and religious texts of allowing those who put in the labor to actually benefit from the reward of satisfaction of labor. Nowadays, the satisfaction of labor is in economics. For those who invest more, their return is more. And so it has shifted from the dynamism of stomach satisfaction to economic reward. Yes.
Wow. Prof?
Yeah, I think it seems to be a pretty straightforward proverb, but I think when you put it out here, it forces us to reflect again.
Right.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of first and foremost, there's dignity in work, and we're saying work is actually good in and of itself, and as part of the bigger societal good. Yes, so definitely, I mean, as long as you're eating, which means as long as you're human and so on, you should actually work, as it were. And, to reflect on what Wakili is saying, what are these situations where, we have people who are eating and are not working? So the issue becomes, we have all these guys, deceits, we have thieves, we have brokers, we have all sorts of things that is not defined as work, you see. Yes, we're saying, fine, whether you are in the economic sector, whether you are thinking, whether you are in government, whether you do some work, do get incomes from it, and society would actually love you even when you'll be eating.
There you go.
Not this one where you're saying it's our turn to eat, but nobody's saying it's our turn to work.
Yeah, you didn't even break a sweat. Indeed. Okay, so we've taken issue with independent officers as well as appointed officers who then go ahead and begin politicking. They're in broad daylight having done this, whether we're talking about the IG of police, whether we're talking about cabinet secretaries, have taken a position when it comes to the politics of the day. Bwana VP, you have an issue with this and you took it to court. What's the problem?
Yes. We sat back after the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Douglas Kanja, went to a political rally hosted by the president in Nyeri. For obvious reasons, he did not wear his police outfit and he was in civilian, but you are not the Inspector General of Police when you wear the outfit. You are an Inspector General of Police when the commission is given to you to act under such capacity. And we also took issue with the recent activities that happened after the death of Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga and the sentiments that were expressed by members of cabinet. And you see, the cabinet in itself, under the constitutional order that we have right now, is not what we used to have formerly under the old constitution of Kenya, where ministers, and they were not referred to as cabinet secretaries, they were referred to as ministers, originated from parliament. Meaning that they would naturally be politicians. They will be elected into the constituent level and act as members of parliament, but once elected as members of parliament, will then move on and be nominated as ministers by the president with the approval of parliament, which was fine under that time. And so they wore two hats. They wore the hat of an elected representative from a constituency level, and also as ministers in cabinet. But now we have a different scenario. Under our constitutional order, we have persons who are nominated by the president and they are appointed by the president, but with the approval of parliament. They are not supposed to be politicians. And if they are politicians, then they ought to abide by the constitutional guarantees from Article 2, Article 4, Article 10, Article 75 on good order, so that they don't have a conflict of interest in two things. One, in their private professional life as cabinet secretaries, as well as their public life. And so it is not a scenario where the constitution will allow you to act two hats, to wear two hats. You have to wear one and choose which one you want to work with.
Is it a gray area? Because you know how they say the law is very clear.
Yes.
Is it very clear that it says a section, subsection Article A, and says one who is sitting in the position of cabinet secretary then cannot politic? Is it clear?
Absolutely.
It says exactly that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, short for doubt, if I will read the constitutional text, you will get the rightful meaning, which is very ripe. It says under state officers and public officers that there should be no conflict of interest between your service to the public and your private interest. And so the private interest becomes, in our case, which we want to demonstrate to court, is that you cannot champion the cause of a political party or act as an agent of a political party, which is a private benefit, while wearing an outfit of the public. So for instance, I am a member of the public and I probably do not associate with a particular political outfit. Now, if you are acting under the war chest or the war basket that I contribute to as a national kitty of treasury, you draw a benefit from that, yet you still go ahead and propagate a benefit or an inclination towards a particular political party, then there is a conflict of interest. A conflict of interest to the duty to me as a member of the public and to yourself as a private person who also doubles up as a cabinet secretary. And so we are saying that you cannot drive a car that is fueled by members of the public,
right,
as a public function, and go and utter remarks that are private in nature. It's a conflict. So the Conflict of Interest Act, which we are now challenging, is what brought us to this table and what brought us to the petition that we are actually forwarding with Mheshimiwa Babu Owino.
Okay.
It's a deliberate attempt, and it happens usually 2 years before the election every time. I don't know why they repeat the same mistake.
Actually, in our case currently, it's been happening since
exactly.
It's changed.
So they take a particular provision, like what was in section 23 of the Leadership and Integrity Act, which was now removed. They pick it in verbatim and paste it in another amendment. Now we have section 25 of the Conflict of Interest Act. Now we are saying you have to make a decision. Are you a cabinet secretary? Are you a member of the county executive committee, which is an equivalent to a cabinet secretary at the devolved government? Or do you want to be a politician? You choose, but you can't wear two hats.
Okay, Prof, this is interesting because yesterday,
Right.
the CS Health, Aidan Dwale, was in a forum.
Correct.
And he said, and I quote, "I have read the law.
Right.
Cabinet secretaries, by law, the same law that Kabata tells us is very clear. We are politicians and we will politic." So he says he's read the law. Cabinet secretaries, by law, we are politicians by law, the same law, and we will politic. He said, but I understand it very clearly. So how do you stop us from doing that, Prof?
Yeah, I think I want to look at it from governance generally, and from practice. You see, as Wakili has highlighted here, before what you used to really have was we just elect our members of parliament, then they would become cabinet ministers. Of course, the Constitution of Kenya 2010 comes in, and we see the practice swing to the other extreme. If you look at the cabinet in 2013, it basically had people who are largely not associated with politics or political parties and so on. And then we come to 2017, we see that number reducing. Then we come to 2022, and we see a lot of people who are basically just known politicians, and so on and so forth. But the question is, why were we doing that? Why were these initial cabinets after the Constitution? How come they're different? And to me, it goes to what we call the spirit of the Constitution. I think at that point, people were quite alert and aware about the spirit of the Constitution. And we had actually seen the pitfalls of having a member of parliament, being a powerful cabinet minister, and then taking the goodies to their people. If you listen to a lot of the politicians now who have been brought into cabinet, of course, the Constitution even went ahead and said no member of parliament shall be in cabinet. While that you can dismiss and say is okay as long as I resign as a member of parliament. I'm no longer a member of parliament, so I can join cabinet. But to me, what is more important is what did the framers of the Constitution and us as a society have in mind? We wanted, to ensure that those who become members of cabinet are actually people who can then execute their task in a neutral manner across the whole republic.
Can they though? Because whether it's speculation or whether it's fact, it's rife that a lot of these appointments were not were not based on meritocracy.
Exactly.
They were not merit-based.
Correct.
That they were done as political figures.
That is true. And that's the problem.
Can you demand of those same people
and that is the problem.
To be neutral?
In fact, that's why we're going back to to the intentions of the framers of the Constitution. And I think that's why I'm tackling this more from a governance, just basic governance point of view. And this is not something that's unique to national government. You see this even in civil society, for example, where somebody is a founder, he's a CEO, and is whatever, and he's paying himself several salaries and so on. Yeah. And we know that is actually a recipe for disaster eventually. Yeah, because you need accountability measures, you need clarity of vision, you need layers of responsibility as likely were. Even companies, we actually do have companies where it's the same guy. The guy is a CEO. He's the board. He handpicks whatever the fellows that he wants for all sorts of reasons and so on. And you find some of these people don't even have the capacity. They're just brought there because those who are Omenya's relatives or friends and so on, and we know it's actually bad for governance. If you have a good board that does have its responsibility separate from the executive, that's doing their own task, we know that those organizations are stronger, and that's the essence of separation of power at our broader governance level. That if you have these different arms of government and different sections of government operating the way they're meant to operate without adulteration from other sections, that you're likely to be more effective. And again, I'll give an example. Look at anything that we're doing in this country. Look at infrastructure. Look at the health that has been talked about. Look at economic development of the country. If somebody is interested in enriching his village, and it brings a distortion. You see, a lot of strategic national resources that could be applied elsewhere to the benefit of the nation ends up being misapplied. You end up putting, a road in a village where it's not needed, and is not of benefit to that village. It is not even of benefit to the nation. While on the other hand, if this person was neutral, he would argue that if we put this road in this and this area, which is not my area, exactly. I'm not coming from that area, it will unlock potential that will eventually end up, being beneficial to the economy and to everyone. So we have to go back there and ask ourselves, why were these things, put in the Constitution? Why did the practice start where, the way it started? And are we this trajectory we are having, where eventually, we're sort of drifting back to the problem that we had solved, where the politician sits across board, and in fact, we are now just talking about the cabinet. Very soon, we might have politicians in the other arms of government.
Absolutely.
And we may end up even with more trouble, and that is actually banana republic. People think banana republic is a republic with a lot of bananas, so it's good for health. No.
So, it's not. Luckily, I have a question, and my question is from quite a number of thoughts that are coming to my mind, because I've covered several elections, and every election year, well, apart from, well, not even just this one, because politicians after every election,
yes,
they start campaigns almost immediately. Public servants, just to draw a parallel to this conversation, are by law barred from conducting business with government.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes. Those are good examples.
But a lot of the companies, like Prof is saying, companies, organizations, deals, it's government officers or government officials who are engaged. And if not directly, it's through proxies, which is a known fact. We've had situations where we've investigated stories where you try to follow the trail to find who are the directors of a particular company, and you find, okay, you may not get the name of the government official directly, but you find either their sister or their brother or their relative. And we're in this country, we're in Kenya. We know the patterns. If this is happening in that space, when now it comes to politics, like what Andu just read, this is a cabinet secretary saying, I have read the law and I'm a politician. And he's saying, it's almost, the attitude is mutadu.
Exactly.
So my question then is this the first time this matter is going to court? Because I've heard this time and time again. And why do we even bother talking about it so much? Because these people don't care. They know what the law is saying, but they'll still not care. Is this the first time it's going to court?
In fact, it's not the first time it's going to court. This matter has found its way in the Supreme Court in Raila Amolo Odinga Petition 2. This was in 2017. If you read that decision, you will realize that the Supreme Court avoided to make a determination on that issue, that particular issue. In fact, it was a copy-paste of what is currently being before court that we are challenging, in its exact words. No full stop added, no comma reduced. The same words. The Supreme Court said that the petitioners had raised it while in submission of their pleadings. It was not pleaded in the first place to allow the other side to, make a comeback to it. But the Supreme Court went ahead to say that it should be determined in another forum to its conclusion, and that's what we are doing. In fact, the Supreme Court gave us a silver lining to proceed and challenge whatever provision was presently there, which is currently in Section 25 of the Conflict of Interest Act.
Hang on, Wakili.
Yes.
This is the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And my understanding is their role then is to interpret,
yes,
and make a determination,
absolutely,
ruling on what is before the court.
Yes.
Why was that not concluded? Why was it necessary to hear this other party? Well, the idea is to interpret what is in the law.
What the Supreme Court was saying back then was that, in fact, for avoidance of doubt, just let me read it for you what it says in.
Okay.
It says, the Supreme Court said that the rule of the thumb has always been that parties must be bound by their pleadings, and especially in a case such as this, where the petitioner is asking the court to address its mind to the possible unconstitutionality of the legal provision. For proper consideration, therefore, and especially in order to do justice to both parties and the greater public interest, we cannot afford to lock our eyes to the disadvantage placed upon the third respondent, especially who had no benefit to bring his thoughts into this cause. Finally, the Supreme Court says, in the circumstances, we are unable to find that Section 23 is unconstitutional. Let the matter be addressed in the right proceedings, in the right circumstances. The right proceedings are in the current petition that we have filed with Honorable Babu Owino, and the circumstances are now ripe. Let me say this. It will be foolhardy to, and I discourage anyone to believe what a person of the caliber of Adan Duale, Minister for Cabinet Secretary for Health, is saying. I mean, you cannot wear two hats at the same time and purport to speak the gospel truth. One, this is a person who went before a House of Representatives, and I don't know where this bravado and arrogance is coming from, that you can say whatever you want to say before a House of Representatives. The same person is asking you, a person who has no, and I'm sorry to put it this way, a person who is missing both upper limbs is purporting to be ambidextrous. I mean, it's so ridiculous to try and even give it a thought that someone of his caliber would be advising, you know. In fact, China, I saw it somewhere in China. China is now currently proposing an amendment to its law that non-experts cannot comment on expert opinion. You cannot, because you are misleading. You cannot say that the law says, the Constitution says at Article 25, at Article 75, yes, that a state officer shall behave, whether in public and official life, in private life. Are you seeing how it's saying? It's even in your house with your wife and your husband, or in association with other persons, in a manner that avoids one, any conflict of interest between personal interest and public or official duties. By him even uttering those remarks, it actually means he has a private interest.
Correct.
So that's why we are in court. We are saying, for instance, in the media industry, which is so successful, why aren't we having professional, successful stories leading us in governance in the media sector, in the ICT? We say that those who have proven a track record of efficiency and are instrumental in the success of certain sectors, then must be the ones who run the country sectoral governance issues. You will never find the CEO of giant telecos as politicians, for heaven's sake, and those are success stories. Why are we saying that health should be under the docket of a person who cannot see left or right, white or black, red or green? I mean, it is ridiculous to assume that you will have a change of story when you are using the same manuscript. You will just end up with the same result. That's the ridiculous cycle that we are moving on to. And if we are successful in our petition, we will now be moving to have them removed as cabinet secretaries, because those offices, those state offices, they are run by public resources. Public resources which are now turning out to be extremely scarce. The government should channel its resources to issues that impact members of the public.
Aren't we dealing with a deeper issue, Prof? Because, you know, the way they said the law is very clear. These people They know and understand the law.
Yes.
They have advisors who will tell them, you can't say this, or you cannot be a participant of this because of ABCD. But they will choose to do whatever they want. It's the attitude that we see cutting across different members of the executive. And it's been a trend where you can have PSs coming to a political rally and making statements. Okay, these are government officials. We've seen this time and time and time again. My question here is, assuming that the petition is successful, like they are saying, what happens next? Is these people are supposed to be removed from office, correct?
Yes.
We know they are not going to be removed from office.
Right.
Correct?
Correct.
So, when the Constitution, because you earlier talked about what the Constitution was envisaging, looking from where we're coming from to where we are, and avoiding a situation where you have this person who is building a road in their village where there are no people, there is no major, it's not a major transport hub of anything, whether it's agricultural products or anything, but we still go back to the same behaviors.
Correct.
Is the Constitution a problem solver here?
The two issues here, and Dennis, is good that we're even discussing and we're putting this on the table. You see, the problem is that we have political mischief everywhere around the world, actually. And what happens is that even amongst the politicians, we really have politicians who are below average as politicians, let alone even other areas. The ambition for themselves is to steal and become wealthy.
Yes.
That's a low. That's a very low. The ambition is not even to be decent human beings, leave alone to be successful politicians. So you know, as a society, we must fight very, very hard to protect society from these characters, because these are the fellows who actually drive the country to the wall, as exactly were. And for me, and that has been my position, and I'm very, very happy, Wakili. This is not happening enough in Kenya. We need advocacy.
Absolutely.
From all angles. We need to be in the courts, stopping everybody. In fact, from the governors. This is not just an issue with the national executive. It's an issue with governors. It's an issue with MCAs. These guys have got companies and they're the ones doing little roads all over the place.
Yes.
This is happening in CDF. And we've been talking here time without number that why is somebody who was legislating insisting on managing these kitties? Yes. It is for theft. We know. It's actually because they want to steal. We have governors outside here. In fact, this is sad, but if you got all the governors and investigated them, we'll have no governor in Kenya. You know, because this matter we are talking about, things are being done by their companies. They're looting through, and some are so unimaginative. They've got companies in the names of their house helps, of their wives, of their children, all these things, all the way to the presidency. The reason why our presidents become trillionaires, billionaires overnight, and that's all of them, by the way, from Kenyatta 1 till now.
Yes.
We've never really had a president, not even Kibaki, who could say that they didn't do business with the state and actually made themselves ridiculously wealthy. So my bigger point here is that this matter that's being pursued, particularly from the conflict of interest perspective, is very important for us as a nation, and we must keep pushing this idea, and even from governance, because the intentions are there. But as long as we keep quiet to these things that we know.
Yes.
I work in this sector. My biggest problem with working anywhere in government is because of the conflicted interest of all these people. Omenya, you can only work with these guys. You can only, see how to sanitize it, So what do? Will we say, okay, fine, we'll never engage in public work, and these are actually our resources. So we need to keep these people in courts and make noises on the streets and do demonstrations, for as long as it takes, so that these intentions that we had for governing our society, these intentions that we had of taking our society forward, at least we'll achieve something. We may, as usual, there will always be mischief, there will always be loopholes, there will always be people running around and so on. But if we keep quiet, it will get worse.
Absolutely.
And the country will go down.
That's why we must have these conversations. Correct. For people to be aware that, first of all, we know what is happening, exactly. And at the same time, you're not going to be quiet in covens to exactly. allow it to continue
exactly.
happening.
Exactly.
One might see it as worrisome, Kabata, that the CS spoke before Senate. That's where he was yesterday. He was before Senate.
Correct.
The folks who are tasked with the responsibility of oversight in this country. And it's not just about money. Sometimes we seem to have whittled down that responsibility to just who has spent the money and how have you spent it. No, even in the way in which you're doing your job is what Senate is supposed to oversight.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Now, if he could say it to them and there was not one single objection to what he said. So, are we dealing with a situation where folks who then have this responsibility are afraid, so the likes of Kabata and the LSK are the ones who have to take it to court? Are we looking at a situation whereby the CS really believes that he has the right to do this, or he is aware that he doesn't, but is going to deal with impunity? What are we looking at here? Because the law, I can't believe I'm going to say it, but it would appear as though the law is very clear. I thought that was only the preserve of lawyers to say it.
There you go.
In this case, in terms of what you are and are not allowed, not even able, allowed to do by the Constitution.
Yes.
But yes, the bravado is very clear from him that I've done it before. Like Dennis said, nobody's ever stopped me. So I'm going to keep doing it. That's the thing. I'm going to keep doing it.
This impunity we're talking about, just to add as you finish before I lose this train of thought.
Yes.
When the conversation around Shah came up,
Yes.
this same person was being asked questions. And with the same bravado, is okay, fine. You people think you want to impeach me? Go ahead, impeach me. I'll go back to my home and I'll be elected.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely.
That I can answer the questions the way I want.
Yes.
And you were before a house.
Yes.
Like you're saying, these are representatives.
People were meant to oversight you.
Yes.
Actually, legal, constitutional oversight.
They've been given the mandate to oversight you in the work that you're doing.
Exactly.
And you're basically telling them that I'm going to do what I want from my understanding. So how do you deal with that? Because I'm a firm believer in discourse, that it is discourse that is going to lead to certain things then being implemented. It's how it has happened in the world forever.
Exactly.
But there are people who listen to this conversation and think that we are talking hogwash.
Yes,
because I can do whatever I want. How are we going to then be able, there's the court and there's the judicial process, but how will you reroute a mindset whereby impunity has reigned for years? People do whatever they want, and this thing that we're talking about is just a talk on a Thursday morning. How do you reroute that thinking?
Let me give you an example that will parallel the conversations we are having right now. In the last say 5 to 10 years, there was no more powerful cabinet secretary than Matiang'i.
Yes, true.
At his helm,
Correct.
he spoke worse than what Adan Duale is saying.
Correct.
He defied logical legal reasoning. He defiled constitutional order. He defiled constitutional order. What did he do? He refused to comply even with a contempt application in the High Court. He refused to comply with it. Why? Because of the autocratic nature of the power that he wielded at that time. What does it tell you about power in social dynamics? That power is transient. It is not permanent to anyone. Joseph Kamodo, the late powerful minister, just a few days ago, we learned that he had looted part of a forest in Nairobi.
Yes.
So what you do in the dark will always come out in the light. That is one thing that you must take out of that. But what am I saying with this reference to Matiang'i? Is that if you have looked at Matiang'i right now, you learn that humility is part of our humanity. That he has since learned that power is not permanent. That he is so humble of a man that he would want to take a picture with Ida Odinga and post it as though he is a man of pure heart, which he is not. So what does it tell us about Adan Duale is that stupid people are extremely confident. Intelligent people, because of their nature to be cautious, are very timid. And that's why they do not put themselves out for leadership, they do not put themselves out for governance, and they do not put themselves out to change what they always complain about. Let me ask you a very, very honest question that we need to interrogate. Surely, the most successful corporate stories that we have ever known of, have you ever had of any relationship with politics? Politics is not a game of success. It is a game of interests. And that is why we are saying that you cannot lead people who can see while you are blind. You cannot do that. The real question is, would you, as the Inspector General of Police, stand in a rally and tell members of the public who know that you are the Inspector General of Police that if you do not do A, B, C, D, security in your area is not guaranteed? Under Article 245, the Inspector General has independent command. In fact, even independent from the President. Independent command.
Yeah.
So when he says one thing in a political rally, isn't it clear like day that there is a conflict of interest between the function of the Inspector General? Let me put you to task again with the Adan Duale. Again, how does it not become undue influence on the part of a member of the public when the cabinet secretary in charge of health stands and says that some of these health projects that we are having in your area may be delayed because of one or two, three things that you have become recalcitrant to the present day government? Are you seeing a direct conflict of your public duty to your private interest?
But is the problem in this case the CS, or is the problem who's holding brief?
In fact, the law does, and I want to bring it again on whether the law is clear or not. If the law was clear, we will not have courts of law.
Correct.
So the law is always to be interpreted. It is not to be clear. It is textual. I am reading it, but it has to have a finality of a judicial determination.
Correct.
And so when you say, is it the one who is paying the piper or the piper, what the law says is that as the president, you can politic, you can do whatever you want to do, but as a state officer, if you hold a state office, and state offices are defined in the Constitution, in our case, the office of a cabinet secretary is a state office. The office of a county executive committee member is a state office. What we are saying is, you cannot politic while wearing those hats. It becomes a conflict of interest that is direct, and that is what we want to challenge. In my conclusion, what I'm going to say is, because there is a provision for actually effecting this change, we want, if the court agrees with us and says that actually there is a conflict of interest in this particular case and challenges the constitutionality of Section 25, which insulates, it is deliberately enacted to insulate cabinet secretaries and members of the county executive committee, we will be moving to remove them from office from Article 75 going downwards. And that is not it's a threat. It is defense of the Constitution. You will be happy to know that we are actually doing this in the spirit of the public. No one is paying us.
Do you see a situation whereby the judicial process, which, interestingly enough, the judiciary is an independent, it's an arm of government at the same level. There's no brother, older brother, more privileged cousin here. It's legislature, judiciary, executive, same levels of government, same power. Do you see a situation whereby, remember that we are saying these appointments to a large extent appear to be political favors that were done for those who assisted or did this politicking that we're talking about, whether they were in office or not, to get them to this point in the first place? The judiciary has often been accused of being complicit when we see impunity reigning and entrenching that impunity by not making the decisions that would do the very thing that you're talking about. What faith then do we have that this will be seen for what it is, and folks are being told, you want a politic, step aside and go do that, but leave the work to folks who are ready to work? What convinces you, and that would convince Kenyans, that a process would work so seamlessly that would actually happen?
What we have now in the judiciary are remnants of courage. And we are dealing with those remnants of courage that we must speak what is the law and not be afraid to say that the judiciary has to be independent. The independence of all these arms of government also talks about interdependence, that they are not independent per se, but they also have an element of interdependence to assist each other in governance. And what we are raising before the court is to tell the court, look here, we have an interesting mode where we are saying that conflict of interest to a personal level cannot be discriminatory. You cannot say you exempt an accountant in the Ministry of Finance and tell them you cannot politic, but a minister, a cabinet secretary can politic, and a CEC can politic. And if the court becomes courageous enough to agree with us, then I have demonstrated what we will do after that. Have we had a more demeaning moment than when constitutional edicts are being desecrated in public openly? I mean, would you imagine of a situation where you'll have someone like Karaoke Chotara, if you remember who he was, in a state office like a cabinet secretary, where he utters words that he believed that university students were being negatively influenced by a man referred to as Karl Marx. And he told the then president, but president, you are so powerful. Why don't you just lock this man up? Karl Marx, not knowing that Karl Marx was already long dead. You know, it was teachings and, you know, inspirations from this legendary scholar. And so we are living in interesting times where we must be ready to defend we must encourage the judiciary to be courageous. We must encourage the three arms of government to operate in ways that are seemingly going to support each other. Remember, failure to do that, we have a lesson from it. Guess which lesson it is? In June last year, 2024, power that is shared among the three houses was taken back to one house. Which house was that? The people. The people said, so even I was right in the Supreme Court when this happened. The people of Kenya went into the Supreme Court, took it over, went over to Parliament, took it over, and it was just left to go to Harambee House and take it over. Remember, even the instruments of power that purportedly are meant to protect are also people. It is a dangerous trend that we are going on. Look at our example in Tanzania, for instance, right now. And Tanzania has gone on a total media blackout from yesterday. My brother is in Tanzania. I tried calling him the whole day. His phone is off. His internet is off. This is now becoming like an axis, an East African axis of evil.
Which is unfortunate.
Which is very unfortunate.
Prof, so we look at these things as though they might just be, you know, it's okay. Well, you know, the CS spoke in Senate yesterday. Everybody's gone to bed, woken up this morning and forgotten about it, right? Okay, so many people can't remember that the IG of police maybe was at a rally somewhere and said something. Do we run into danger when we take it with such a nonchalant attitude, whereby we say, okay, well, it was just a rally. What's the big deal? Are we in danger when we do that?
Exactly. And I think that's what Wakili is talking about here. You know, subdued societies, societies where people don't have avenues of expressing themselves, or for whatever reason choose not to express themselves. The problem is that some of these things, the disease becomes very big. So when it attacks you, you basically just disappear from the face of the earth, as it actually were. We saw that with Arab Spring, you know. Those were countries where people never, you know, had avenues of expressing themselves. So even when things were going wrong, people were actually just quiet. And I think in democratic societies world over, it is not like, you know, when measures are taken, that the society is that bad. Nicolas Sarkozy is
behind bars.
Is
5 years in prison.
Thank you.
In Botswana, we have the finance minister and the former VP.
Former Indonesian president.
Exactly. Former Indonesian president.
Brazil.
So
Madagascar.
Ran away.
And to me, those are good societies. It doesn't mean that you know, corruption and all these things we're talking about are endemic. It means that they're doing something about them. So in a way, you don't let this thing escalate to a point that then it becomes a threat to society. And that's partly why, for me, what Wakili and team are doing at LSK is highly commendable. And as an entire society, we must pursue these people, not just at the level of their arrogance towards our laws and the Constitution, but actually holding people personally culpable for all these misgovernance issues that they have, under the jurisdiction. In fact, for me, I consider myself generally a very kind person, but I wouldn't mind to see half the governors, in committee. I wouldn't mind to see a lot of these ministers in committee. In fact, I wouldn't even mind to see some former presidents in for the crimes they committed. These so-called powerful cabinet secretaries and so on. Because what we'll be doing is that we'll be creating a standard for ourselves as a society of conduct. But number two, we'll also be giving opportunity for people to actually make wealth for themselves, in ways that society actually recognizes. If you look at all these characters, these are people that because of their networks and their positions and so on, they can be able to actually make legitimate wealth. But then because we've created such an easy path for them to steal, then they go that way. It's like having a student, an A student, cheat in exams because you've made cheating so easy. What you need to do is to block cheating so that the A student can get the rightful A. And that's what I was saying, that
I like that.
Let these guys get into business. Let the Johors of this world get into business, make money from business, not come in and bend politics and try to make money from that. And that applies to all of these characters. Somebody arrives. Why should I be rich? Because now I'm cabinet secretary, and all I'm doing is that I am just pilfering from public coffers, while I could have actually ran legitimate business to be able to to make my wealth. But my point too is that we should continue pursuing. We should continue pursuing these matters, be that at legislative level, but even within the courts, so that people are answerable to their actions, so that at least the society we are running is close to the society that we've envisaged through the different statutes that we have. We'll be becoming a better society as we continue. That is not to say it will happen overnight. That is not to say that we not always have these people amongst our midst, just like the examples I've given. Those are considered some pretty advanced societies, and we still have people stealing in those societies and so on. So the thieves will always be amongst us. Like Christ said, the poor will always be amongst us.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if we let our guards down and do nothing about it, then in fact we'll end up in kleptocracy, where it's the thieves will be running the system. And that'll be a sad thing, because eventually we will just collapse. We'll say we don't accept the rules of the thieves, and in fact we'll actually throw away the rules. And as Wakili says, we shall say fine. I mean, we the people have taken over our society again. We'll think about what to do about it.
And that it's been established that you cannot be quiet about some of these things, because in the silence thrives the impunity.
Correct. Correct.
And so I'm curious, going back to that question, Mwaura VP, have the courts previously pronounced themselves on issues such as this, clearly for folks to know that a precedent has been set? Have we seen something like this happen before in the courts, where people who have positions, whether it be in the executive, designated to them into ministers or cabinet secretaries, having been told you cannot politic, and the court has declared itself clearly, succinctly, and said absolutely you cannot? Have we ever had situations like that?
Not in the finality of judicial pronouncements, and that's where we are right now. We are begging, or rather we are anchoring ourselves on paragraph 333 of Raila 2, the Supreme Court petition filed by Raila Amolo Odinga, that clearly outlines, and in fact the Supreme Court was just afraid of delving into that issue at that time. Raila Amolo Odinga, God rest his soul, raised that issue in fact in 2017. He said, hold on, we are coming from 2013 to around 2016, where the cabinet largely consisted of non-partisan individuals. Running into that election, then Raila raises the issue of undue influence, that former politicians were now being recruited into cabinet for purposes of consolidating political clout for former President Uhuru. And you see, if a court of law now becomes courageous enough to say that, one, as a politician, you cannot serve in cabinet, then we will have taken a constitutional gain. But two, by saying that in your removal from office, holding a state office, then it means you cannot hold any other office in your lifetime, because then you have desecrated and defiled the constitutional edict. And I know where the conversation will go is that it will ask the question, then does this also bind the president? And it is so, in fact, let me use that word, it is the law is clear now.
Yes.
That the president is also a state officer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The president holds a state
Correct.
office.
Correct.
What is good for a goose is good for a gander.
Correct.
You cannot run away by saying I'm the head of state, I am
Correct.
the commander in chief, and so conflict of interest does not apply to me.
Exactly.
It applies to all state officers, including the president. And so we are going to have a constitutional moment where, if we are successful, we will have a win. And we hope that Kenyans of like minds will come together and encourage us to propagate these issues, so that it is not lost that the proper functioning of a state officer is 100% directed towards a benefit to members of the public.
Correct.
The impact is not on political partisanship. It is the impact on the people of Kenya. You cannot isolate and say that since we are in UDA or DCP or KANU or Sisi kwa Sisi, we are going to benefit this way from the antics of cabinet, because we are not aligned to political inclinations. And in fact, let me say this. The law abhors the political campaigning tool where members of cabinet or even the president put a scorecard of what they have done to the run-up to an election. You cannot say this is what we did, this is the scorecard. You cannot say that, because the other your opponents do not have an equal footing of saying this is what we've done. They will just be saying this is what we will do.
But they do that every day.
Exactly.
It is
They
wrong.
do it
It is wrong.
every day.
Correct.
You will
can
be judged by
sure.
what can be seen, not what you're saying.
But you can be sure that this weekend, even, we will hear as they get onto wherever it is that they go, that this and this and this is what we have done. I'll give you an example.
Yes.
Yesterday, the president in Nakuru with Governor Susan Kihika, and they were addressing IDPs. 2007, I beg your pardon. 2007, 2008 IDPs. They have been IDPs in this country for 18 years. And yesterday, the president now said, each family, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of families, we're going to give each and every one of you 20,000 shillings. And because now we're able to do things like this, we have built roads, we are going to finish road from here to there, we're going to do all of these things. We have done, we will do, it continued like this.
Right.
And then went on ahead to say that whatever was causing us stress by these people who have been wearing sufurias on their heads, we have removed that now, and we can now focus. That was politicking.
Correct.
It was clear. It's done every time there's a microphone in sight. What you're saying is that the law doesn't just discourage it; it hates that that should happen.
Exactly.
Yes.
Which law? This Kenya Constitution.
In fact, it empowers the IEBC to block any of such candidates. Only that we don't have a courageous independent, I don't know even why we call it Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. It ought to be just called Elections and Boundaries. There is no independence there. But look at it this way. You cannot have an equal footing in campaigning when you are using achievements as a scorecard to the eyes of a public.
Exactly. And they don't necessarily live in your own achievements, because
it might even be
these are actually public resources. Exactly. And as a public officer, you are expected to execute those things. Yes. You remember this issue came up. It started with CDF, yes, where members of parliament were putting their photos, their images,
with a project,
exactly, as though these are gift they've gifted to the constituency. Governors were putting their photos and images on projects funded. You see, I have no problem you putting your image on a project you funded privately.
Yes.
And that's partly why we must have these conversations. When the president, the current one you're talking about, moves around the country, gifting people from whose resources, is he using his savings to then give people roads, or give people a church, or give people this or that and so on? No, these are our resources. these resources collectively belong to all of us, including the opposition. These are our taxes. So basically, the president cannot conduct himself in a way to appear that he himself has done something for Kenyans. No, we've employed him to actually manage our resources. He cannot come and lay a personal claim to those resources. He's like a CEO of an organization coming to say, look here, I am the one, as a person, who has actually done this for you. It is the CEO has to say it is NCBA that has done this for you. In fact, when the CEO goes to now claim is the one doing these things, they become a threat to the organization. And to me, this is the deeper thing. That we're taking for granted that these same politicians we're talking about, they're moving around appearing that as if they're the ones who are doing favors to the country. And of course, they're not just appearing, they're even lying about it. And the president is also lying about it. I heard the other day that, because of the new Treasury CS, that the shilling reduced from
169 to 165 to 129.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all we did was a quick fact check of where the shilling was when the CS was being appointed, and it was at 129. So and there's a danger of politicking because number one, and it's not healthy for good governance, because credit doesn't go to where it's due, and now you end up in a situation where public resources are actually being used to promote an individual's interest. In fact, to promote private interest, promote partisan interest, to ensure people position themselves, for other positions, but using our taxes.
Yes.
And these are the conversations we must actually have that. Look here, we've actually elected you president of this country. You do have a mandate. You do have resources. You cannot go outside there and misrepresent as if you, the person of Ruto, is doing us a favor. Is Omenya's, I'm taxed almost half of my salary. When somebody comes and appears in my village and pretends that he's the one doing things in the village there and not my taxes, that person we should actually take action against them. And it's all these officers and this bad behavior. And that's why I was saying that these conversations, we must actually, in fact, ramp them up further. So that we can say it doesn't matter whether you're president. When you're using state resources, you cannot appear there to then personalize them. And then very, very soon now we're getting into the campaign the campaign mode. And then you end up with this thing that we had actually ran away from, and the behavior is getting worse. Now that this thing, I think they're calling it empowerment, is Harambe, which had been sort of banned, because they say we have the state, we have the government, we have our taxes, use them to solve these problems. But now you're moving around, emphasizing that this is a favor we are doing you as a group of politicians. We are giving you money. These are things that we must call out and continue calling out so that we can actually have hygiene and so that we can actually have just basic good governance and decorum.
Okay. The idea is that you cannot have improper influence over members of the public in terms of campaigning. And campaigning, we are not even meaning the general election of 2027. We even actually want it to apply to the by-elections that are also coming.
Right.
You cannot use public resources and hoodwink members of the public that those are your resources. What the Constitution defines as improper influence, it goes and confirms and equates it to corruption. It says
correct.
Or corruption.
Exactly, correct.
Improper influence or corruption.
Correct.
So it doesn't take it away very far from graft.
Exactly.
It uses the word improper influence or corruption. The Election Offences Act, in fact, would go ahead and say, except as authorized under this act or any other written law, a candidate, referendum committee, or any other person shall not use resources for the purpose of campaigning, public resources for the purposes of campaigning during an election or in a referendum. It goes ahead to say that no government shall publish any advertisement of achievements of respective governments, either in the print media, electronic media, or by way of banners or hoardings in public places during election period. That is the improper influence.
Exactly.
And remember, that particular issue is a constitutional edict at Article 81. It says that the electoral system shall comply with the following principles. Then it goes to E. Free and fair elections, which are, it says, free from violence, intimidation, improper influence or corruption. Improper influence is put in the same category with violence, intimidation, and corruption. You cannot read it in isolation. You cannot be a cabinet secretary full of bravado and attempt to say that we will do A, B, C, D. We will say, as a cabinet secretary, I will not care what the Senate, summons me for. I will not attend. I will not care what a court of law. We are living in a country that is governed by law, for heaven's sake. If we give up that platform that we are governed by law, we will be run by crass. And crass is something totally different. It is unimaginable, it is unpredictable, and it is extremely uncomfortable.
If I were to play the devil's advocate, okay, maybe a little devil.
Yes.
In this case, is it possible that folks who then engage in these activities are unaware of what the law says?
Oh, I want to tell you in black and white that they do know.
They know.
They do know what the law says.
Yeah.
Let's not. It's not a case of ignorance.
Correct.
We have just explained. For instance, look at Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale. That is not ignorance. He actually knows what he's saying, and he has chosen the wrong path.
Correct.
So what we are doing is we want to correct this problem and stop it on its track by saying, if the court agrees with us, we will be moving to other proceedings.
Correct.
You have to choose. If you are Cabinet Secretary for Energy, Mr. Wandai, who is a member of the Law Society of Kenya, if you choose to be a member of Parliament for Ugunja, you have to stick to being a member of Parliament from Ugunja. And rightfully so, he said he resigned from that seat and went for the appointment of Cabinet Secretary. You must then wear that hat as a Cabinet Secretary fully.
And forget about Ugunja.
Well knowing that the people of Ugunja are now represented by someone else.
Correct.
And leave the politics of Ugunja to the Ugunja people. And that is the constitutional order that the committee of experts sent their first draft parliament, saying that members of cabinet by law should not be politicians. And even though parliament disagreed with them, they did not yield ground. The members of cabinet in a constitutional order must not be politicians.
Okay, it's sticky. Why it's sticky? I mean, and it's not possible to put the law aside and operate void of the law.
Correct.
Right? But it's sticky because of that thing that I had asked before. When you see that the majority, if not all of the appointments, just at cabinet level, for example, are made as political favors by the one who is appointing, because we know what the vetting process looks like. Once he has nominated them, they're just as well as having been appointed.
Right.
If those have been done at political favors, obviously in the minds and on the shoulders of these individuals, there is a certain amount of allegiance then that you owe to the appointing authority.
Of course,
So should he stand up with a microphone and speak somewhere and say a particular thing, whether it is spoken or not, you feel you also must do the same thing when it comes to your opportunity. How do you separate the two? Here is somebody, whether it is in innocence or not, or in full knowledge and understanding of what is happening, there's a monkey on your shoulder that tells you, I'm a cabinet secretary, I've got work to do. But there's also this thing that's niggling here that tells you, okay, we got to toe the line as well.
In fact, before Prof says this, the allegiance is not to the president.
Exactly.
The allegiance in the constitutional order at article is on the people of Kenya and the Republic of Kenya. It says at 152.4, each person appointed as a cabinet secretary assumes office by swearing or affirming faithfulness to the people and the Republic of Kenya and obedience to this constitution. It does not say obedience to the president. Before the president and in accordance with the third schedule, the allegiance is not to the president. It is to the people of Kenya. So it has to be demystified that you are not swearing allegiance to a person, and that's where the danger lies, isn't it, Prof?
Exactly. Prof. And in fact, for me, there's absolutely no problem. Again, like we're saying, all we're doing is to make the bar too low. Because when these cabinet secretaries and public officers perform their legitimate role, don't they make the president look good?
When they do.
Yeah. even that example that we just used a short while ago, if indeed Wandai stabilized the shilling,
Yes.
Those are totally non-partisan issue. Doesn't it make our president look good?
Yes,
Yeah.
it
So I think it's also lack of imagination and sheer stupidity to imagine that by singing these praise songs and not doing your job as envisaged in the Constitution, that you're doing even that president a favor. You're not doing them a favor. In fact, the truth of the matter is that even politically, the president will look very, very good if the people that is put in place are doing their work very well. And this is a common governance space. When you're hiring a CEO, you're hiring a CEO because you think they'll do a good job. And the CEO does not need to go and praise the chairman of the board, so that the chairman of the board thinks that the CEO likes them. In fact, when you get your good returns there, the CEO will be showing gratefulness. In fact, you'll be showing gratefulness by listening to the direction and the advice of your board, but by actually doing the best thing that you'd actually do. And this is such a common sense issue. It's so common sense that I don't see why people don't see it. How do you become a good student? It's not by always passing by Professor Omenya's office to tell him, Prof,
I'm here.
I like you.
Yeah.
I'm your favorite student. The other students don't. You're a good student by doing the work I told you to do, by studying hard. When you get an A, I'll call you, hey, brother, we need to have coffee. You ace that exam. It's such a common sense thing. But we're in this society that is so sick and so distorted that I employ you to do a job as a cabinet secretary. You don't do it, but then you go to the public saying that that's the best professor who has ever taught me.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you don't even attend my class. And then I say, students must politic. Students must politic. Students must talk about their professors and so on. And all I need you to do, I gave you a job as a cabinet secretary. I need votes. What I'll be putting on the table for Kenyans is that, look here, we've dealt with the price of unga, we've stabilized agriculture, we've done all these different things. That's all I need you to do. You don't need to come here and do partisan allegiance. In fact, it doesn't help anybody. It's such a common sense thing. But the truth of the matter also is that in the political class, and I'm happy to say this on air, and I've been saying it, is full of very stupid people.
Don't get angry, Prof. What we are saying and the lessons can be drawn from the experiences when ODM was not in government. The Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, and I'm reminded that he has the highest award from the state, Chief of the Order of the Golden Heart.
Right.
Reminds us that power is transient.
Exactly.
Ali Hassan Joho, while not serving in cabinet, reprimanded cabinet secretaries from making public utterances while cabinet secretaries, isn't it?
Exactly.
Let me give you another example. Eugene Wamalwa, cabinet secretary for water and irrigation, attends a function with Deputy President William Samoei Ruto in Kapsaret and makes public remarks about it. Remember, he's a member of the Law Society of Kenya.
Correct.
Okay.
When he has now left cabinet, he is now saying cabinet secretaries should not be making political remarks in so it suits you when it's comfortable for you. So it's not an objective test for politicians.
Correct.
But the Constitution has an objective test.
It
is not subjective. It says you cannot politic when you're a member of cabinet. You cannot politic when you're a member of the county executive committee. You cannot politic when you hold a state office or when you hold a public office. It goes to the nitty-gritty of the lowest public officer you know. So it is not a game of power. It is a game of constitutional order that says politics must be devoid from good governance, because the Constitution is alive to a moment where politics can kill the spirit of good governance.
That's true.
It cannot happen so that a cabinet secretary can choose to purport to convince us that they can wear two hats at the same time. And I am saying this again on air, that if the court agrees with us, we will not stop here. We will move to even define the limits of how the president can appoint members of cabinet, because it is in our lifetimes that we will be paying the ultimate price.
Right.
Bad governance is not paid by only by future generations. Even current generations pay for bad governance.
Let's look at these, because usually we obviously established the problem. We've looked at ways to go and sort it out, then looking towards solutions. And in the last minute, because I know both of you have to attend,
Yes.
other assignments.
Right.
But here we are, and we're saying, fine, there's a problem. It's entrenched.
Right.
How should these individuals, there are
Right.
22 of them, 23 of them,
Right.
how should these individuals be appointed? In the last couple of months, there's been this whole soliloquy about how we want to be like Singapore. But you know what this man did?
Right.
Is that he looked into the society and he got the best
Correct.
of
Absolutely.
the individuals
Correct.
in their fields of work. The best.
Correct.
Not
Correct.
politicians.
True.
The best.
Correct.
And he put those men and women to work
Correct.
in these sectors.
Correct.
And that's how they got
Exactly.
the results
Exactly.
that they needed.
Exactly.
We seem to be doing
Yes.
the opposite. How do you get to that place where we're saying, okay, we'll get rid of this political issue?
You see, part of it is and this happens to be fair to politicians. This almost happens everywhere. That you get people who are not really they're not averse to they're not clear
Yeah.
about how success is achieved and how good governance is achieved. Basically, just wrong people. Sometimes you end up with a thief, taking over an institution and so on. These pretenders, as it actually were. But it's common sense, and I always tell people, even people running organizations, I always like using corporate sector. If you want to succeed, just employ the right person for the job. Your problem will be gone. If you employ the wrong person for the job, number one, the job will not be done properly, and your work becomes more. So, it's such a common sense issue, and it goes all the way to nations. That if you have the right people for the job, the nation would run. This nation ran at some point when the president was almost indisposed, because Kibaki at some point had a pretty strong cabinet. Ironically, he had even picked them from politicians. So even amongst politicians,
You have some, yes.
you actually do have some good people who can actually do the job. We're not saying that they don't have the competence, but you see now, when you're coming in and politicking, and I think we need to really define what that is versus governance. You see, when people are politicking and people are working in the political space, it is actually positioning yourself to get power. And you see, the tools that you use for that are very different for tools for achieving success in governance. You see, when you want to take over an organization, you need very good people who can do politics,
Yes, yes.
and enable you access power.
Yeah.
When you want to become chairman of LSK,
Yes.
you need guys.
Yeah.
And some of these are fellows who may not even be able to sit down and do any work. but they can enable you get power. That's true. They're popular on the ground. They can bring in the votes and so on. So we're saying, yes, politics and politicking is okay and has its space. But you see, why do you want to get power? You want to get power so that then you can actually govern, and that's why we talk about political economy. We understand that there's a bit of politics in it, but the bigger focus is actually to govern a people so that they can make social and economic progress. And that bit is totally different. In fact, that's why the Constitution spells all these things, how the executive works, who the governor is, and so on, because they understand. I mean, we understand as a society that you cannot get politicians to run society the way we've envisaged that the society would run, and we separate the two. And that was a problem with the older constitution. They were saying, look here, before it was these same guys who then took over society and ran it as executives and so on. And we're saying that is totally inefficient way of doing things. Let politicians do what they're good at, which is politicking and accessing power and representing people. And then on the other hand, when it comes to matters of governing our country, let us get let's become more technical. Let's look for other competencies that we need then to take that bit forward. And this is partly why this conversation must continue, where we're saying, look here, I mean, if you're going to bring in somebody who's Minister for Water, if you're going to bring in somebody who's Minister for Roads, if you're going to bring in somebody who's Minister for Justice, can you, for example, just pick Omenya who happens to understand urban issues and whatever, and make him Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Of course, we know Omenya doesn't have the competence to do that, really. But then we believe, particularly in our section of the world, that anybody can do anything as long as a politician. So you get this guy who, I mean, the only thing that he understands about health is that he was treated by a doctor when he was unwell. and this is a person who's running the thing, and his only qualification is a politician. We have, honestly, some of the decisions that are being made in our country are just outrageously stupid. We're at a time when some funny person had been, I will not mention the Mwaura here, had been picked to run roads, highways.
Yes.
This is somebody who doesn't even have a degree in chicken rearing, leave alone roads. And we say, surely...
chickens have rights.
Exactly, chickens have rights. And they're basic competencies that somebody must have. And of course, we are calling out Parliament for that. Every garbage that has been taken to Parliament has passed. Because political interest has overridden that particular space where we're saying, look, these politicians again can actually vet these fellows and say, look, this one doesn't seem to have the competence, to actually do the job.
To address this. And that's why we have to take this conversation seriously. Definitely the pair of you to then be able to enlighten these conversations is why this cannot be the last one that we have. Because there are many an issue that must be interrogated and looked at in the detail. But we want to thank you for the time that you took to do this today. And we're looking forward to a time in the very note how I stressed and emphasized very near future for these conversations to continue, because we must keep them on the front burner at high heat.
Thank you very much. But this I have to put on air.
Okay.
And I need to thank LSK and Wakili here, because I'm convinced, I've lived in other societies, I'm convinced we don't have anywhere near enough public interest litigation in this country. We need to see a lot more public interest coming from different professional organizations, from universities, from civil society. That is how you keep the society, on its toes. Yeah. So when the LSK does this, in fact, for us, it doesn't matter the outcome.
So long as
for us, what is important is that we are interrogating matters that are significant for our country.
Indeed.
Yeah, thank you very much, Wakili.
He's Vice President of the Law Society of Kenya, Mwaura Kabata, also joined this morning by Professor Alfred Omenya, a governance expert, has joined us today. Thank you very much for being part of this conversation. Asante.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.